Welcome to From Head to Heart and Home. We're so excited that you're here listening in on our conversation today. This channel is a channel created by women, empowering women to take intentional action in creating the life that they want, with your hosts, Carla Center, relationship coach, and myself, Shanda Soretti, certified transformational coach. So today, Carla and I have a fun little um, topic for you all, and it's inspired by a card that I actually pulled this morning, one of Louise Hay's cards, and it says, "There is no blame." And so, what we're going to dive into today is really all around blame. And on the back of the card, it actually says, "I release the need to blame anyone, including myself. We are all doing the best we can with the understanding, knowledge, and awareness that we have." So I think that this is such a beautiful, filled topic, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. So without further ado, Carla, why don't you kick us off today?
Okay, I'd love to. And, blame is one of those tricky things where we're always, because we want to solve, right? We want to solve problems, we want to create stories, and blame can be right there in the middle of all of that. And if you think about how often we're trying to find out who's to blame for something, we would release so much energy that we don't want to have and then create so much more time in our lives if we let go of who's to blame.
Hmm.
And that was the first thing that I think of. Like, if we're just really looking at it, if there's a situation we don't like, if we're not looking at who's to blame, me or you, if we're just looking at what's my part in this, what how can I be accountable for my part in it? Because I don't like it. So I'm going to change it, not because I'm bad, you're bad, any of that. Nobody's to blame. We're not worried about that. We're just like, okay, I want to grow from here because I really didn't like how the situation came out. I don't like feeling stuck here. So instead of looking for who's to blame, me or you, I'm going to go,
Hmm.
what was my part? How can I change this? How can I make it different in the future? Because I want something more.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I like how you're talking about like the wanting to blame, right? And this is where we get caught up in making people right and wrong, whether that's ourselves or other people. And like you were saying, Carla, it's kind of a process of letting go of that blame, right? Of that need and that want to blame, because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And it's okay to have those experiences, and it's important to have compassion for yourself and for others, right? Because
Right.
we've all done things that have created that situation, that right wrong reaction. So whether you're someone who's feeling like someone's trying to place the blame on you, or you are trying to place the blame on someone else or yourself even, then just acknowledging that and having the compassion, and if you catch yourself in it, be willing to really explore it in order to release it and let it go, because it's not going to take you anywhere positive. It's not going to take you anywhere supportive. And it's when we start to realize that, where it makes it a lot easier to make different choices and think different thoughts.
Right. And the saying that Shanda and I say all the time, you can be right or be happy. Blame is being trying doing your best to be right. You're
Mm,
putting everything into I have to be right and you're not open for anything else. When you're so busy worrying about who's to blame, you're not open for new information, for new possibilities. You're not open for like, where could my life go from here? I'm just like, it's your fault. I'm angry with you. And it can be all consuming. We've all had
mm,
those thoughts that just loop in our head, stuck on who's to blame for something and
yeah,
angry about it. But when we're like, okay, I can let go of this blame and move into something else. I don't want to be consumed by it.
right. Yeah. And I think too, the part that really sticks out to me is understanding that we are all doing the best we can with what we have, with what we know, with what we understand, right? And we're not all at the same point in our lives. We're not all at the same part on our journey. And so we really need to acknowledge that and hold space for others. Just because I'm further along than someone else doesn't make me better. And just like if I'm not as far along as someone else doesn't make me any less than, right? Our worthiness is all equal. It's inherent. We're born with it, can't be changed, can't be taken away, can't be bended, molded, shifted, shaken, right? It's just there. So just notice if this is really standing out to you, notice how, like, ask yourself, where is this showing up in my life? If I'm blaming someone for something, where in my life might I be doing the same thing, right? If we're going back to that mirror analogy, where can this show up in my life? Vice versa. If I'm blaming myself, why am I blaming myself and where else is this showing up? Because this is the deep work, right? This is the healing work that's asking you to be done.
Right, right. And blame can be a way of controlling the situation as well, because we
Mm,
have this need to control because we do want to earn our worthiness. So we have to be in control of every little point in our life because we don't necessarily want to let everybody see those vulnerable pieces in us. And so if we are open, like Shanda says, nobody's right, nobody's wrong. I'm learning from you. And it doesn't matter where you are on your journey or where I'm at. We can learn from each other. And if we're not blaming, we're like, huh, what is really going on? And like Shanda said, where am I doing what is they're really making me angry because of what this action and that's my reaction. Why is it? What's going on in my life besides between me and this person? There
mm,
is more, there's always more to it. But when we're in the blame game, we don't see it. All we can see is, oh, you did this to me. It's
mm.
horrible. And I'm not going to talk to you now. Okay. Well, sometimes we do need to step back, but why are you stepping back? Is it because you don't really want to look deeply into what's going on between the two of you? Because if you put a mirror in front of you, you're like, ooh, this is something I don't like about me. And I'm not really ready to work on it because then I'd have to own it because I have judged it as something bad.
Yeah. The ownership piece is always a big part of it, right? And that's it's one of the uncomfortable pieces, I think, to the blame game is kind of taking back that ownership of being like, oh, hang on a second. I created this. How, where, why, when did I create this? And going back to what you were talking about control, um, control is such a huge aspect in all of our lives, whether we realize it or not. It shows up in the sneakiest ways. You might not think you're someone who tries to or likes to control things, but I really urge you to reconsider that because we all do it somewhere at some point. Right? Sometimes it's super obvious, and other times it's sneaky, like people pleasing, right? People pleasing is
Mhm.
a form of control. And a lot
Yes.
of us don't know that. So just have love, have compassion, be gentle, be kind, and ask yourself, like really important questions. I think that the healing work and the healing journey is all about asking yourself questions in a way that um, supports your life, supports your capacity to explore and understand yourself at a deeper level without coming from a place of judgment and criticism, right? So, like asking yourself, for example, what might happen if I choose to let go of this control? Right? And finding out and answering that question, what could happen? What are the possibilities? And if you find yourself going to the negative, right, that's probably where most of us will end up going, then I would encourage you to look to the positive. Like, how can this change my situation in a positive way? How could this letting go of the control change my life for the better? And if we're going to entertain thoughts and ideas, right? If we're going to make stuff up, is what someone else would say. If we're going to make things up, why not make up things that are going to help us achieve what we want in our lives, as opposed to create more of the same, more of the disease, the discomfort, and the pain, right? So allow yourself to really explore with that curiosity and that compassion and that love without judging yourself, making yourself wrong. So always going in with curiosity and looking around and just being honest, having a look at what's there and you know, asking questions, right? If you don't know what kind of questions to ask, a simple Google search will help you immensely, right? You can find journal prompts and, coaching questions and whatever you need to support. If you were looking for other ideas, Carla and I could come up with some for you too. If you want to reach out directly to us, we're more than happy to support you there as well. But the ownership, right? The being willing to kind of like get it wrong, right? It's like I'm okay with not being perfect. I'm a human being, and that is all part of the bag.
Right. Right. And just realizing, so if you're worried, so if we think of all the bad things and we're going to look for any little sign of proof that the bad thing's going to happen. But if you do, like Shanda was saying, and you're thinking of positives that could happen out of it, then you're being more curious as to what kind of information can come in for those positives. And it's like the analogy, if you want to climb a mountain, if you're standing at the bottom and you don't take a step, you are a failure. But if you go up and slide down, you're not a failure. You're just learning and you're going to do it a little bit different and keep going up, right? And
Hmm.
so if we're looking for the positive and praising ourselves for each step that we take and saying, I did this, instead of going, oh, I'm too afraid. I don't want to do anything more. Um, and it's not my fault. It's so and so's fault. We're placing blame. Or we're like, oh, I've had all these things happen and I just can't do it. And you just continue to keep yourself down in that blame game, then we're just stagnant. And that's
Hmm.
where blame keeps you, is whether you're going outward with your blame or inward with your blame, you're keeping yourself stuck where you're at. And no matter how happy you are at the moment, at some point we do feel stagnant if we're not looking to grow,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
And I think it's great that you're talking about being stagnant because that's the uncomfortable. That is the
Mhm.
miserable, right? That is more of the same. So if you love your life, great. That's amazing. Keep doing what you're doing, keep growing and evolving because that's likely what you're doing, right? But like you were saying, Carla, it's like we fall into the trap of being afraid to fail, being afraid to try because fear of the failure. Whereas if we can come from it from the different perspective, the different lens of, okay, instead of being afraid to fail, meaning I'm afraid to even try and set out to do this thing, what if I look at it like I want to embrace learning opportunities? That might mean I fail, but I'm going to learn from it. It also might mean that I succeed sometimes too. And what if it's 50-50? What if half the time we succeed and half the time we don't? Those are pretty good odds, right? So again, changing the perspective, changing the mindset from being negative, from catastrophizing, from thinking of all the bad things and all the what ifs, the failure, the being afraid, the fear, all the things, and stepping into embracing learning opportunities and embracing the desire to create something greater for your life.
Right. And the more that you're conscious of where you're blaming and holding yourself back, the more you'll be like, okay, I'm not going to do this. There's a reason why I've done this. We've told you many, many times, have compassion for yourself and just be like, I'm just looking at it to have a clearer lens as to what behavior has kept me where I'm at right now or has kept a specific relationship. Sometimes it just has to do with the relationship. You guys are in the same spot and you can't see past the blame game to move
Hmm.
forward in
Hmm.
however you end up moving forward. And so to allow yourself to be like, okay, I'm not going to do any blame. I'm just going to come from a place of love and compassion and looking for clarity to see where the two of us are doing this so that we can no longer do this, but move forward in whatever direction and be open to the direction. The control
Right.
thing I was talking about, try not to control where it goes, but be like, okay,
Hmm.
this is obviously not working. It's
Yeah.
obviously not working. The same with what I was saying about your goals. If we're so worried about the blame of what's keeping us in that same stagnant spot, then we're going to
Yes.
just focus on the blame of it instead of
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to take a step anyway.
Yeah. I like that you're talking about don't resist the change, right? By trying to control it. because that's so true. We also do that. We try to control even the change. And it's like, sometimes it's like, or most times, we can't even fathom the potential of that opportunity. And if we try to control it, we can diminish it, right? Instead of it being way up here, what the universe is going to deliver, because we're trying to control it, we end up down here. So we're taking smaller steps when the universe is actually trying to create a bigger leap, right, for you. So I love that. And also, kind of circling back on the patterns that you were talking about, having love and compassion for yourself, knowing that we're operating out of patterns. We're operating out of our past thoughts and experiences, and really truly understanding that, because when we can choose something different, it's from that place that we're able to create a new life. And it takes work to do that. It takes daily work to do that. You have to be intentional. You have to be very conscious. Okay. So that awareness piece, right? And above everything else, it takes love. We cannot hate ourselves to change long term. It doesn't work. I've tried it so many times over and over and over in my past in many different ways, from weight loss to relationships to, purpose. And you can't hate yourself there. It will not work. So we need to have that love. And when you think of the energy of blame, like the energetic quality of blame, it's not from a place of love, right? Now, the original pattern or root might be derived from lack of love, right? So it might be put into place because you're desiring and wanting and looking for love, but it's that strategy doesn't get played out in that way. So it really comes from a lack of love. So where we're lacking is where we get to really infuse those qualities even more. And in my experience, there is no harm that can be done by giving as much love as you can, by pouring into someone, by pouring into yourself as much as you can, right? Not from a place of self-sacrificing, right? But from a place of, I am sufficient and I can share my love and offer my love to myself and to others from this place.
Right. And when you do that, there is no blame. Uh,
Hmm.
I promise you, when you're pouring into yourself and to others, like Shanda said, many of us pour into others out of self-sacrifice. And if you really sat down and looked at why you're doing it, it is not out of love.
Hmm.
Sacrifice does not come from love. That's another topic. But so you're pouring into others, you're pouring into yourself. You feel amazing. Even when you have those hard things come up, you feel and think differently about those things because you're not coming from that place of lack, from that place of fear. When something comes up, you're like, okay, I'm not quite sure how we got in this mess, but let's figure out why. What came upon, what are the things that happened, and how did I contribute to it? But when you are feeling like just pouring out, you've poured everything out, you feel that rock bottom, which by the way, that's where you're so urged to make some changes. However, a lot of things we make, we don't pour into ourselves still, or
Hmm.
we pour in about this much, and then we're like, we feel, oh, I feel better and I'll just do stuff, and then we pour everything out again. But if you've poured into yourself and if you've poured into others, you're not playing the blame game at all. So there's the space where you're like, this is what comes from allowing myself to release the need to blame anyone, myself included, and just move forward in my life, because it's going to turn into this beautiful exchange of love with all the people that come into contact with me. I do things out of love.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I think too, like, how you're talking about like pouring the things out. Sometimes what happens as well is that we try something, right? We take one step and it doesn't go as planned, right? And then we run and hide. We give up and we make it mean that we were right in the first place for not taking that action. And it's like, okay, hang on a second. Like, how much action have we been taking around this thing, right? Around this new thought, this new idea? Was it just one time or has it been several times? Because there is a difference, right? let's go back to the 50-50 thing. If it is 50-50 and we only tried once, well, we haven't even given it a fair shot, right? So at least try twice. And I would definitely say try more than that, but at least try a few times, right? And I want to circle back to the whole love thing too. And I remember before I was a parent, this was a belief that I definitely had and likely stemmed somewhere from something I had heard growing up in my own childhood. But I remember having a thought before I had my own child that you could spoil a child with love, right? Like you could give them too much love. You could spoil them that way.
Mhm.
There is no such thing as too much love for anybody, no matter what ages you are. You can't spoil someone with too much love, right? You can't love someone too much unless you're coming from a place, once again, of self sacrifice, totally different. We're not talking about that here. But when we think of little kids, like we need that love. It's fundamental to our growth and to our development. And even as adults, it doesn't go away, it doesn't stop. There's even science around a baby who has all of the things that it needs when it comes to like a clean diaper, food, warmth, all that stuff, shelter. But if it does not have that connection with someone, that love, it will die because it's a basic human fundamental need, right? So never hold back the love. And sometimes when we get into that blame game, it can create resentment and it can create so many other negative thoughts. And then we get into that game of withholding our love, even when we want to show it to someone or we want to share it or pour it over to someone else, we start withholding. And when you find yourself doing that, get super curious why. What is the thought? What's the emotion that's creating you to that's causing you to create that result of withholding, right? Because if you're withholding your love from other people, you 100% are withholding it from yourself. So it's something to really start to notice, start to write down, start to journal about, meditate on, whatever works for you, but go to work at figuring that out and solving that for yourself.
Right. Right. And then also say say you're like, okay, I understand that blame and love and all of this that you guys are talking about. How is it serving me
Mm.
to withhold or to
Right.
blame? That's
Mm.
a big question for you to ask yourself. If you're having a difficulty with what we're talking about and letting go of blame, ask yourself, journal about, meditate. How does blame in this scenario serve me?
Mm.
Because then you can get to that root of why is this such a need for me, even though in the long run, it absolutely is not serving me, but I have a belief it's serving me, and here is the way it is.
I love it. 100%. Our beliefs, we're always proving them, right? So
Mhm.
looking for where this is actually working for the belief that you have. We're not saying that the belief that you have is a positive, healthy, supportive belief because that's not what's happening. And the proof is in the results, is in your life, right? So asking yourself, love it, Carlos, so good, right? How is this serving me in ways that I might not even know or recognize because it is working for you always, which is why being a human, our lives, our thoughts is so mind blowing to me. I'm
Right.
so fascinated by this type of work because we're always trying, our brain is always trying to work for us, but we have to guide it to where we want to go, not be in the backseat on autopilot, allowing it to control us, right?
Right.
It's just doing the best it can with what it knows, understands, and has access to. Coming back to what we started with.
Right, right. And realizing that that's how everybody's works, no
Yeah.
matter where they are on their journey. So that's the reason why not to get in the blame game for yourself. You're
Mm,
like, oh, I want to move forward because life is not happening to me, it's happening for me,
yeah.
and I get to choose.
Yeah. Choice is a very powerful thing, and we all have it always. And I think something that I definitely want to add to the end of this conversation is forgiveness, right? We need to forgive ourselves for blaming ourselves, for making ourselves wrong. We need to forgive ourselves for making others wrong, for blaming others, and really, truly, wholeheartedly work on forgiveness for those things on a continual basis, because it's not a one and done thing. It's going to take practice. And you might feel like it worked the first time, and it may, but it may come back. So don't shy away from doing things repetitively, right? Like my morning practice has been the same outline kind of thing, the same idea concept for the last 3, 4 months. And now is where I'm really starting to reap the reward of putting in the time and the effort for that practice. So be willing to do things over and over and over and over, create different results, keep trying, right?
Right. And if you're like, I think I should have gotten it by now, I shouldn't have to keep doing this over and over again. Remember things like when you learned how to read. I
Hmm.
mean, you learned how to write, you learned how to walk, any of the things that we've done that we now unconsciously can do so easily. It just takes repetitive to create the new connections in your brain to do this. There's nothing wrong with you if you don't, from the very first moment, have it dead on. It is over and over again, and that's how we make the connections, and we get to have grace with ourselves. I had a client yesterday say, I have a hard time forgiving myself. Okay, how does that serve you, and what happens if you just keep working at practicing forgiving yourself? What is the benefit in the end?
Right. And to follow up, the how is it serving me? Do I want to keep recreating these results? Do I want to keep recreating these situations over and over again, or is there something else that I'd rather choose,
Yeah,
right? And as long as you like your answer, then it's okay, right? Like I said, if you
yeah.
love your life where it's at, keep doing what you're doing. We're not saying change and shift and do all these things, but I think the key to it all is continuously committing and being open to learning and evolving and growing, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right, absolutely.
beautiful. Do you have anything else, Carla, that you'd love to add to this conversation or share with our
I
listeners today?
don't. I think we've done some great things, and that there's a lot that you can pull out of this and just digest and put into action.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of questions. Go back, re-listen, write down all of our questions. These are thought-provoking questions, right? This is what the foundation of our work is based on, is like asking really great questions. And I can't tell you how many times I have clients say that to me, even not clients, right? Even just people I connect with. They're always like, you ask really good questions, and that's what it's about. So write the questions down, go through the process, practice it, try, right? And just keep taking that action. So, thank you for tuning in today with Carla and I. If you enjoyed our conversation today, then make sure you click the subscribe button below to get the notifications, and be sure to join us next week for another authentic conversation. We look forward to seeing you then. All right, everybody. Bye for now.